All right, let's get into it. So like I said, I'm Stephanie and I'm in the CST team here at Farm Focus. So we're on the phones, chats, and basically we're here to help you. So the purpose of today's online training is just to familiarise you and just show you around Farm Focus, showing you what to do in the program that you would normally do in Cash Manager, so transactions, that sort of thing. I am a former Cash Manager customer myself, so I do know the program. So that's where we'll be showing you like what do I do in Farm Focus and how I used to do it in Cash Manager. Right, so this is approximately 60 minutes long. I'm not expecting you to take everything on board straight away. It's really just to show you what you can do, and then you've got the help centre here, and the staff and the CST team are here to help you as well. So first off, before we do anything else, I will show you the help centre and a few other ways that you can communicate with us. So popping down to the bottom left of your screen, you can see this little question mark. If you hover over that and then go to help, this will take you to our help centre, which is just full of articles, videos, tutorials on how to use the program. And you can search for anything. So for instance, I might want to know how to create a journal entry. So all I'm going to do is type in journal and enter, and it's going to bring up all of the articles that we have about creating journal entries. So if I open this article, it's showing us how to do it with some screenshots. It's also giving us a couple of scenarios, like why would you want to create a journal entry and how to create it. And then there's a couple down the bottom there, we've got a couple of related articles as well that you can use. So that's the help centre. We also have a chat function. This wee speech bubble down the bottom here. We have a number of staff who are always online, ready to answer your chats. So let's say I want to find out where my budget has gone because I've just migrated from Cash Manager. I thought I had selected my budget to come across and I want to know where it's gone. So if I just start typing in, hey, just migrated, here are my budgets. And we've got what we call a bot. So it recognises keywords like migrated, budgets, cash flow, plans, that sort of thing. And it's going to come up with a few articles that it thinks might help us. So we can see here, we've got a message that's popped up from the bot, and it's got how to turn a draft plan into a working plan. I don't think that's answering my question. I want to find out more. So instead of saying, yep, that answered my question, I'm going to talk to a person. And that is going to alert the team here that there is a chat that needs to be looked at and answered. So for now, I'm just going to close it and we'll wait to hear back from the team. Now, we also do have the free 0800 number, and just remember that all of the help that we give you, whether it's online training, you ringing us, chatting us, emailing us, all of that, it's all free. You're not paying for any of it. So do take advantage of those opportunities. Now, what we're going to do first off, we're going to look at your settings and just go through that. So your settings, we've got farm business, so your trading name, entity type, effective farm area if you are using the EFS or the livestock trading report, so the economic farm surplus report. You do need to have this information if you want that report to be effective for you. And you can see here that you can change the effective farm area from year to year. And you can also look at previous years as well. Back into settings, we're going to look at users now. Just like Cash Manager, you've got complete control over the users that have access to your database. You would normally see a list of them just in here in this white bit, has an email address and their user level, so whether or not they're restricted, organisation admin, you'll be able to see that. You can also edit your users in here, just clicking on the user itself. You can remove their access, change their access. If you want to add a user, they do need to be registered with Farm Focus. If they're not, they will receive an email asking them to set up an account or register, and then they will be able to access your database from the drop down up here. So if I drop this down, I can see all of the I can see all of the databases that I have access to. So there's no more logging in and out of databases and waiting for it to synchronize. You can just jump from one database to another. So back out of the users, and I can see that we've had an answer from one of the team here. What did they say? Let's have a read. Okay, so when you migrate, your budgets become draft plans. You can find them on your main plan screen to make them your working plan. And it's that same answer that the bot gave us. So it actually did give us the right answer, how to turn a draft plan into a working plan. And if you are joining us in module 2, which is all about the plans, cash flow, and your management reports, then I'll be showing you how to do that. Okay, so I can just say, hey, thanks for that. There we go. Right, next we're going to look at the financials. So that's your GST, your GST number, your invoice or payments basis, your GST filing frequency, and also your end of financial year. If you need to change any of these details, do give us a ring, we can do it for you. And back out of there again and into codes. Now, this is really important. Your farm codes are the backbone of your database. Everything goes against the codes. So in Cash Manager, we just had the farm codes, and then you had your coding, auto-coding rules, and your splits. They were stored within each of those codes. Here, they're all in one space, so you don't have to go into each code to find the auto-coding that you've set up or your code splits. So let's take a look at the farm codes. So we've got our sections: income, purchases, farm expenditure, etc. And then you might have noticed we've got these wee chevrons over the top here. This allows you to collapse or expand on, collapse or expand on your codes. And we can do the same thing here with these arrows beside each of the sections. So if I look at, for instance, income, I can see my income categories. If I drop down even further, I can see the extended codes. So let's take a look at one of the stock codes. We'll look at the bull calves, just so you can see how they are set out. Everything that you had in Cash Manager has come across. So all of your codes have come across. The only thing that hasn't come across are your auto-coding rules and any splits that you had, simply because the criteria in Farm Focus is so much more superior. Like, you can really drill down into those transactions and invoices to code. So with the the bull calves here, we've got the parent category code as beef. We've got an extended code. GST, it's inherited it from the business, so from income. Tags, I'll come to those later, but they're pretty awesome actually. The type is stock. Obviously, it needs to be set up as stock, otherwise the plan is not going to recognise it as an animal, so your livestock won't recognise it. So just make sure it's set as stock. Settlement delays, if you want to automatically set that date when you're coding, you can put that in here. Stock units and yield down the bottom here, you do need to have stock units and yield if you're setting up a new code, otherwise it won't let you go any further. And we've got automatic aging. If you don't want to age them up, then you can set to none and then they won't age. Breeding status, again, you can set them to breeding, secondary, progeny, or none. So just bearing in mind with breeding and secondary breeding, that's all about your percentages. So if you're breeding your R2 heifers, or if you're breeding, just your R2 heifers or your younger stock, set them to secondary breeding so that they don't get, the progeny doesn't get mixed up with your main breeders. And then we've got the code status. So we can make this code inactive if we want to, so that we don't see it. You can delete new codes, but any codes that you have got transactional data against, you can't delete them. So best just to deactivate them if you're not using them. And the Kpi reporting group, this is important for your EFS report, KPI, Key Performance Indicator. It's just putting everything where it needs to go in your report. So if you are in your EFS report and you think that something doesn't look right, come in here and have a look at the coding. And so we're backing out of there, and I'm just going to use my chevron here, my second chevron, to drop down into my categories. Now, I'm going to show you how to create a new extended code, and we will be using this code later in Module 2 in our plan. So farm expenditure, I am going to go down to my health and safety. There it is. And I can drop that down to see what codes I already have. So I've got equipment, management, protective clothing. So let's say I've just signed up to a subscription for health and safety management. So I'm getting a company to basically look after my health and safety for me. All I'm going to do is pop over to health and safety, the category. Everything has three little dots down the right-hand side. This replaces right-click in Cash Manager. So I'm going to use the left button on my mouse and select the three wee dots. and I've got the option to edit, new extended code, deactivate or delete. So I'm going to go new extended code, and it's already allocated it to the health and safety category. And I'm going to call it maybe HC, capital letters, and let's say it's hazard code. And I'm going to pay them a subscription. So it's an expense, it's already inheriting the KPI from health and safety. I can click done now. And there we go, I have a new code. I can move these codes around if I want to, depending on which ones I use more often. This is really if you are using the mouse to scroll through your codes when you are coding to select the code. So you can just highlight and drag it down. Sorry, it should. Oops. There you go. So you can drag them around and move them up and down. There you go. Okay, so those are your farm codes. We're going to have a look at the coding rules now. So we've got two types of coding rules. We've got bank transaction coding rules and invoice coding rules. You can set them up from within settings, and this is what they look like. So we've got one here for, say, personal drawings. What we're doing is we are telling the program to recognise certain criteria. So other party references, particulars, even the dollar value and the bank account that it's come into. You can code against those criteria. So this particular rule is telling us that the other party must contain Bella Pharma. And if the program sees any transaction that contains Bella Pharma in the other party, it is going to automatically code it to personal drawings. Now you've got two ways to review these rules. The first way is individually. So that's where you're not so sure if the coding is consistent. Maybe it's going to change from time to time. So you're going to open up the transaction. It's going to be coded, but you're going to confirm it. So you save it to confirm and it sends it away to complete it. As part of a group is where you have several transactions that you've got coded, and you know that the coding is consistent. It's not going to change. Things like personal drawings, bank interest charges, things like that, they're not going to change. So what you're going to do there is, instead of opening up each individual transaction and saying, yep, I'm okay with this, it's going to confirm several transactions at once. So for instance, as an example, last week I had 60 transactions that I brought in, and 24 of them had coding rules against them. And I was quite happy that they were consistent. I wasn't going to change them. So I selected the Run Coding Rules button that I'll show you further in, and it confirmed all 24 transactions at once and sent them away within about 5 seconds. So just like that, a third of my transactions were coded. So I use coding rules a lot. Like I said, you can set them up here in settings, but I prefer to set them up within my transactions, because by doing so, I don't have to manually enter in who the other party or my other criteria are going to be. It picks it up from the transaction when I'm setting up the coding rule within it. So that's just a wee tip. You can set them up within the transaction. You can even go into your completed screen and select transactions you've already coded and set up coding rules from there. And there it's not just picking up the criteria, but it's also picking up the code. So it takes you less than 5 seconds to set up a coding rule. So when you have 5 minutes here and there, go in and set up as many of these rules as you can. It really is doing the job for you. So we've got the transaction coding rules, and just like the bank transaction rules, we've got invoice rules. So things like farmlands, farm source, the vets, anything that you're coming through with invoices and you're seeing regular transactions like maybe fencing materials, tail paint, teat spray, that sort of thing, you can set up coding rules so that it codes it for you. So this is what the invoice coding rules look like. The criteria are slightly different to transaction rules. So we'll open up this TFM tractors. Here we go. And we've got it set so that the other party must contain TFM tractors. And you can add criteria. So for instance, the reference on the invoice could contain a number. The line description, so within your invoices, you've got several lines. The line description you can drill right down so that you're recognising that it comes from TFM tractors, but you want to use different codes. So for instance, you might have an R&M code for your tractors for work or servicing, things like that, or you might just have a general VHTC code, so vehicle expenses for the tractor. And so you can enter in the criteria for coding even further. And again, you can set up your invoice coding rules in your settings, or you can do it from within the transaction, which I advise you to do, especially when you've got multiple invoice lines like farmlands. You just want to set up coding rule 1, 2, 3, 4 within the same invoice. It's a lot quicker. It does the work for you. And then the next time that invoice comes in, it'll be already coded. So pop out of here into code split rules. Now, like I was saying, these have not come across from Cash Manager. So you are going to need to enter them again, things like electricity, maybe you've got some vehicle expenses that you split between personal and business, telecommunications, just anything that you want to claim the business portion on. It's a little bit different in Farm Focus. One, all of your coding rules, your split code rules are sitting together. So in Cash Manager, you would have to go to setup, go to your codes, open that particular code like electricity, see if it's got a split, so select the little split button and see if it's got a code rule against it. And here, they're all sitting together. So what you see is what you get. So I'm going to create a new rule just to show you. We can't create code split rules within transactions or invoices. They have to be done here in the settings. So let's say that I am going to split the ute, for instance. I'm going to use 90% business and 10% personal. So I'm going to type in VHU. I can get my ute code, or I can type in ute, and there it is. Or I could just type in VH and it brings up all of my vehicle codes, or I can use my mouse to scroll down. So I can use my mouse to scroll down, find my vehicle expenses. I prefer to use my keyboard. I know that it's either the ute or it's a vehicle expense, so I've got the ability to really drill down into my code. So I'm just going to type in ute. Here we go, VHU. I'm going to select, it's already put the code in here for us, and it's selected business as default. I'm just going to type in claimable, and I'm going to say 90%. And the rest of it, I'm still going to code it to VHU, but I'm now going to call this personal. I'm claiming 10% for personal use. So that is how you set up a code split rule. And what it is it is just like in Cash Manager. You apply that code and it immediately splits it out for you. It doesn't matter if it's in an invoice or if it's in a transaction, it'll split it. So we'll go to save, and there it is there. There's our new rule. If I want to delete any of these rules, and you can do the same with your transaction rules and your invoice rules, they all have a little 3 dot down the right hand side. Just left click on your mouse and you can either edit or delete. Okay, so back into production now, in settings. So we've got our livestock values and livestock weights. These are really important for things like the livestock trading report and your other management reports to make sure that you've got the right information. So you drop down the wee arrow and you can manually enter in the prices. And we'll pop back into livestock weights, same story here, drop down the arrow and manually enter in the weights. Just bearing in mind that it does need to be live weight. That's the industry standard. And then production down here for your milk solids if you are in dairy. This is really important for the dashboard, which I'm going to show you shortly with the cost tracker and break even. We need to have what you're projecting that you're going to produce. In previous years, you can replace your projection with what's actually happened so that you've got that tracker, seeing how you're comparing against last year. So that's where you enter in your kilos, your milk solid production. So next one is bank accounts. So these are all your bank accounts. You've got a default bank account and it's telling you what it is. You can add a bank account. You can deactivate bank accounts, but you cannot delete bank accounts because they have got history against them. So we can deactivate them to hide them from what's called your needs action screen. And there is a release coming shortly where you will be able to filter your bank accounts and your cash flow as well. So we'll just take you through how it looks. We've got the bank, the account number, the account name, the short name, which is what you see in when you're looking at your balancing and completed and your main needs action screen. We've got an opening balance, overdraft, the overdraft interest rate. And if you want to have a bank feed, which I highly recommend, so those transactions are coming in for you, you can download a bank feed form, send it in to us after you've filled it out, and then we will forward it onto your bank. So that's the major banks. We've got Westpac, Rabo, BNZ, ASB, ANZ. BNZ is a little bit different because we have live feeds with them, so you can actually set your feed up yourself from in here, and it's pretty much instantaneous. So bank feeds are really awesome to have. Basically, the bank is just feeding in that information overnight, and at the bottom of the file is your closing bank balance. So in Cash Manager, it would ask you if you wanted to import in those bank transactions, and then you had to code them right then and there. In Farm Focus, you don't have to. The transactions just sit there, and you can just pick away at them as you wish. You don't have to code them all at once. They can just sit there. All right, so that's your bank account. Tags are pretty awesome. If you had enterprises in Cash Manager, they will have come across as what we call a cost tag, ready for you to promote them up as management tags. So management tag is your enterprise. So that's where you've got several different streams of revenue coming through under one GST number, and you want to separate them out so that you can track your income and expenditure against each one. So you get one free with your Farm Focus database, and then after that they're $150 each per year excluding GST, so it turns out to be around $12 or $13 a month. And underneath your management tags you can also apply what we call cost tags. So a cost tag is just what it sounds like. It's tracking your expenditure. So things like if you've got a project, we've got one down here for say the feed pad upgrades, you can track every single dollar that's going against that project. So fencing, maybe you're upgrading the shed, maybe you're even doing a bit of reno on the house and you want to claim some of that for your business expenses. You can do that as well. And the thing about cost tags is that you can't get rid of them once you're finished with them. They're there forever. They are free, and you can have as many of them as you want. So we'll go back out of tags. Into connectors, we have got connectors with Farmlands, FarmSource, and you can see we've got a couple of payroll providers there. So with Farmlands, it's very straightforward to set them up. Just go connect, you need your account number, your account name, shareholder name, and then you can choose your feed start date. Just bear in mind that you can't future date it. It has to be either now or a past date. So what that's doing is when Farmlands releases their statements, it feeds your statement into Farm Focus, and all of your purchase lines are split out. So you've got all that rich data, and then you can go through and code it. Or if you've got coding all set up, then hopefully it comes in and it's pretty much coded for you. So that takes about 24 hours. And same again for FarmSource. If we go to add new FarmSource account, it's going to take us through to the FarmSource website where you log in, and then you can select the store accounts that you want to bring through. And again, that one takes about 24 hours to set up. And Crystal Payroll and PaySource, we don't do the wage book anymore simply because we're no longer compliant with IRD. So we've decided to leave it to the professionals, those who actually know what to do. And as I understand it, both Crystal Payroll and PaySource are offering 3 months free for Farm Focus customers so that you can trial the product. Now the Invoice Scanner, in Cash Manager we had a feature called Scan My Bills, so it was bringing in your invoices for you. We've got Invoice Scanner, which is a lot smoother, a lot less dithering around. It just literally brings in your invoices for you. So if you get, say, the vet bill is emailed to you, you forward it on to an email address that you will be provided. It's unique to you, and it comes straight into Farm Focus. And I'll show you a couple of those invoices when we get to our needs action screen and how they look when they come in. So to connect, it's very simple. We just say connect. You would say connect Invoice Scanner. It's done instantaneously. It'll pop you back out to the screen. Come back into the Invoice Scanner, and you'll see here where I'm moving my mouse around a unique email address. And it's usually your farm name or your business name with @scantofocus.nz. So that is your unique email address. If you do use Invoice Scanner, I would suggest that you set that up as a contact straight away. So save it in your inbox, in your mailbox. So you could call it Farm Focus or Invoice Scanner, so that when you are forwarding those emails through, the invoices through, you don't have to sit there and go through your contact list. You know it's Invoice Scanner, so you start type in Invoice Scanner and it brings up the address for you. Just bear in mind also that it's not actually an inbox. it's merely a conduit getting data from one spot to another, so there isn't actually an inbox. I wouldn't suggest that you give that email address out to your suppliers, because if they start sending through random stuff like newsletters and notices and things like that, Invoice Scanner will just get really confused. Righty-ho, so that's Invoice Scanner and connectors into contacts. So instead of having your contacts split up between, like, say, the wage book, debtors, and then your main transactions, everyone is together now, and they're all listed alphabetically. So I can scroll down and see all of my contacts. Let's say that Angus Black, he is a debtor, so I am invoicing him, but I'm only invoicing him maybe once or twice a year. So I can deactivate him when I don't want to see him. So I can click on this wee button to deactivate him and save. And now he's gone. He's still there in the background, but I've just hidden him. So you can, when it does come time for me to send him an invoice, I can click on show inactive, and there he is. And I can reactivate him. Click on my three wee buttons down the side and reactivate contact. Now, if you are issuing tax invoices, just be aware that you do need to have a full postal address. Otherwise, it won't allow you to even select them as a contact or save that and generate the tax invoice. If you are using the bill payments export tool, we need to have a bank account number and a contact. So first off, contact and then a bank account number. Otherwise, you can't select those invoices. And the tool is actually quite intuitive. It'll recognise which information you're missing. So when you're in bill payments and you see that wee exclamation mark, just hover over it and it will tell you what's missing, so that you don't have to go in and search. It will say no bank account number, no contact, to set up the contact. And I'll show you that when we get into needs action. So those are your contacts. You can delete contacts if you're not using them, but if you have issued tax invoices in the past, you can't, because that is financial data set against that person's name. So just deactivate them if you're no longer billing them. Now we're going to go to the fun stuff. First, let's take a look at the dashboard. So this is basically a snapshot of what your business is doing right now. We can see your cash flow, so what's actually happened. You've got your overdraft down the bottom there, and then this green dotted line that's showing us what is still to come this year. So we've got our revision line here, the red line down the middle, and that moves across from month to month. We have our bank balances. If you have a bank feed, this is current as at today or yesterday. If you're manually importing and or entering your transactions, you will need to manually balance each month. And so if you haven't been manually balancing each month, that's just entering your bank balance, you will see, like for instance, this one here is telling me that this is at the 31st of October 2021. It's not at today or yesterday. So I need to go in there and manually bring my balances up. We've also got a bird's eye view of our invoices. So we can see at the moment that we've got 3 accounts receivable that have yet to be paid, and we've got 7 accounts payable that we still need to pay that are now overdue. And I can also see the dollar value of the invoices that I've issued, so income, and the dollar value of the invoices that I have brought into Farm Focus that I need to pay. Now, this is a new feature, farm working costs. This is available for dairy at the moment, but we are working on dry stock, so sheep and beef as well, so that we can have the same, being able to track those costs. So what the farm working cost is telling us the cost per milk solid, per kilo of milk solids. So it's telling us what it's cost us to produce that kilo of milk solids. And this is really important. This is why you need to put in that forecast, like what you're producing or what you're planning to produce. If you need to update it, you can update it from in here. If you need to change it, and come in and just make those amendments. There we go. And below that, we have the break-even milk price. So how much income is needed to cover your business expenditure. So I'm sure that there are a lot of our dairy farmers out there very happy this week after getting that good news from Fonterra about the increase. If you want to find out more about how this is all calculated, do have a look at our help article explaining the calculations and where the information comes from. You can click on find out more on either one of these boxes to see those articles. And finally, on the dashboard, we have our pie graphs, which are splitting out. We've got our dollar values for each of these codes, as well as the total percentage, so what you've earned and what you've spent. Okay, we're going to have a look at the needs action screen now. So actuals, this is your transaction screen in Cash Manager, and it's been broken up into 6 parts. And I'll show you what those parts are. First off, we've got needs action. This screen is basically what it says. Anything in here needs your attention. We've got completed, so that's where everything goes when you have either coded a transaction or matched the transaction to a coded invoice. This looks a little bit more familiar. We've got it looks a bit more like the old transaction screen. We've got stock activity, so all of your sales, purchases, and your non-financial events are in here. Balancing, this replaces your reconciliation. So you'll notice that you've got daily balances now. There's no more statement date ranges. It's just doing it on a daily basis. And finally, we've got tax invoices. So all of your tax invoices, if you are issuing them, they live here, and we'll come back to those. Repeating, which is empty at the minute. This is just if you're repeating invoices. So first off, needs action. Down the left, we've got our invoices, and on the right, we have our transactions. So the whole idea with Farm Focus is it's a paperless office. You create or receive invoices and load them into the right-hand side and code them and just leave them there. And then when your transactions come through the bank, that's when you match them to the invoice. And what they're doing is it's merging them together, and the transaction is inheriting all the coding information from the invoice. So you've got that physical invoice sitting there, accessible, you can open it up and view it. No more printing them off and putting them into the ring binder. Now, I like to look at this screen when I'm looking at it because it's very busy looking. I like to think that I'm reading a book. I start at the top of my left-hand page and I work my way down, coding all of my invoices. And then when I'm ready and the transactions have come in, I go across and I start matching. So first off, just a little handy hint here. If you're not sure if an invoice has been coded or not, you'll notice that we've got a mixture of grey and white invoices. If it's grey, it's coded. If it's white, it's either completely uncoded, or as sometimes happens, with the old farmland statement, you code all the lines, but you might miss 1 or 2. So even if it's mostly coded, if there is anything uncoded, it will remain white. So that's just warning you that you still need to pay attention to this invoice. So I'm going to have a look at, let's say, this Farmex Limited invoice. I can tell that this has come through Invoice Scanner because it's got this wee teal box down the bottom. So this has got a physical copy of my invoice next to it. I'm going to open it up, and we've got the invoice date, the due date, the other party, the amount. At the top, we've got the attachment showing us the physical invoice, but I can see there's a bit of information missing here. There's no description, and I don't seem to have an invoice number that I can see. So I'm going to teach the software to read this invoice. Invoice Scanner is very smart, very intuitive, and we've taught it to pick up things like GST components, descriptions, names, invoice dates, due dates, all that sort of thing. But sometimes, because everyone lays out their invoices quite differently, sometimes it struggles to find some of that information. And this is where we need to step in and teach it how to read the information. And it can actually be quite fun doing this. So I'm popping down the bottom where we've got missing details, improve the accuracy, etc., etc. I'm going to click on this link, fill in the gaps. And it's going to take us, what you're going to see is on the left-hand side, we have a physical copy of the invoice. And on the right-hand side, we've got the data that it has extracted. So this is my Farmex invoice. There we go. So these green boxes that you can see, this is showing you, it's the program showing you what it thinks you want to see. So it's picked up the invoice date, it's picked up the name, it's picked up quantities, things like that, but it hasn't quite picked up everything. And I can see that here, my invoice date doesn't have anything in it. So I'm going to show it where to find the invoice date. So I'm going to click my mouse into that field on the right-hand side, make sure that that cursor is blinking so I know it's in the right field. And now I'm going to take my mouse and holding down my left button, I'm going to drag it across that date. And you can see now that that box has turned blue. That's you teaching the software where to find the invoice date. So we've got the name, reference, invoice date. I can see that the description is not there. And we need the description because this is what you're coding. So you must have a description in there. So what are we doing here? Description. Okay, it hasn't put anything in there. So again, I'm going to take my mouse and I'm just going to drag it across. Oops, see, I didn't make sure that it was in the right spot. So now I have to start that again. There we go, and make sure I've highlighted my description. And there it is. And it's also picked up the totals, quantities if you need to put them in there. Make sure you're not putting in the unit prices, you're putting in the line totals because it won't calculate it for you. Total GST and also the total of the invoice. So we can save that now. And it's going to take us back to that invoice and we're going to see that it looks different. There it is. We've got the product and we've got the correct invoice date. So I'm going to code this now. I'm ready to code it. I can either just call it ADC for AD computers and software. I can type in computer. I can type in software. I prefer just to type in AD and then I can select it maybe if I want to from the video. So I can save that now and it's ready to match to a transaction. Or right now is when I can add that coding rule. I know that this is always going to be computer and software, so I'm going to create a coding rule before I save it. I'm popping down into my 3 wee dots on the right hand side of that line and I'm going down to new coding rule. This is why I like to do it within the invoice because it's already picked up everything for me. I don't have to sit there and type in the line description. I don't have to type in the other party. And doing it in the invoice after I've coded that line, I don't even need to put in the code. It's already doing it for me. Save, done. It's got a coding rule. So the next time I get that invoice coming through, it's going to code it for me. So we'll save that. Okay, and let's have a look at a couple of others. We've got country vets. Let's show you maybe some bulk coding. If you've got something from a supplier and they're all requiring the same code, instead of sitting here and going animal health, and just going down the list, I can tick the boxes. Here we go. Oh, keep going. And I can just code one line and it codes all of them for me. So that's an option if you've got using the bulk coding option. You can also select all or none if you want to do that. And you can also merge all of these lines together. If you don't want to see all those lines, you just want one big line, you can do that too. So you can do that within the invoice. Right, so that one's fully coded as well. So we're going to save that. There we go. And now I'm going to do a code split rule. So putting in that code split that we had with the ute. So I'm going to type in, let's say the diesel is for the ute. So I'm just going to type in ute and it's going to split that line straight away for us. There it is. So we've got a code split rule applied. Claimable, we've got 90% and then 10% for personal use. And now I am going to just select all of these other lines and just code them to farm fuel. So type in farm fuel or BHFF. Save that. Now I've got a number of invoices that I have got coded, they're ready to go. I've also got their transactions on the right hand side. I can either match them from the invoice side. So I open up an invoice and I say match and I find the transaction, I select it and I say save. It's a bit arduous doing it that way because you've got to do invoice by invoice, or you can do exactly the same opposite, doing it from the transaction to the invoice. And again, you're opening each transaction, selecting match and then choosing the invoice that it relates to. Both ways I reckon are slow. So I'm going to show you quick matching, and quick matching is just what it sounds like. It's quick. I had someone a couple of weeks ago, she had 180 odd invoices down the left hand side. Her GST was due, she was panicking. I showed her the quick matching. She had all of them matched off in under half an hour and that was it. She was ready to file her GST. So I'm going to show you quick matching. Over on the right-hand side, we've got a number of wee icons here. Quick matching is the little circle with the 2 horizontal lines in the middle. So open it up, and I can see all of my invoices that are available to match, and I can see all of my transactions that are available to match. So let's see, what have I got here? Have I got, actually, just before I do that, I'm just going to find this FarmX and just make sure that the party is selected correctly. And save. Right, into quick matching. Right, so we've got a number of invoices and transactions here. If I click on the FarmX invoice, watch what happens on the right-hand side. Okay, not sure if you saw that, but the software has recognized the dollar value of the invoice, and it's also recognized the name, and it's found that transaction, and it's shot it up to the top of the list so that I don't have to sit here and scroll down and find it to match it. So this is quick matching. So try that again. Select FarmX invoice, select the transaction, match, done. They are now matched. They've gone to completed. They've updated GST, management reports, balancing, cash flow, stock activity if necessary. It's done all of that in a matter of seconds. Now you can match from the invoice to the transaction, or you can match from the transaction to the invoice. I'm going to select, say, I'm going to select country vets down here. I've got 2 transactions that I can see for that. So I'm going to scroll to the top, select my country vets limited invoice, and it has recognized both transactions, which equal the total of that invoice, and I can select both those transactions and match. There's also one in here, it doesn't appear to be working at the moment, but I mustn't have put the transaction in. I've got 2 transactions here for Rona, 2 invoices for Rona Romney, and if I add those 2 together, so 460 and 2185, 14, 2645, I can create a transaction, and I'll show you how you can match one transaction to 2 invoices. So let's say you've got 5 vet invoices that have come in, you've decided to pay off the statement, so you're paying one bulk amount. You can match multiple invoices to the same transaction. So I'm going to record a money in transaction, and I'm just going to date it today. Rona Romney, total amount is 2645, and I'm just going to save it. I'm not going to code it because I'm matching it. So I'll save that. And into quick matching again. Here's my Rona Romney transaction. I'm going to select it, and if you watch the left-hand side, you'll see both of those invoices shoot up to the top, and there they are. So we've got Rona Romney and Rona Romney, match, done. So you can get this done in a matter of minutes, matching off all your transactions and your invoices together. So that's quick matching. I'm going to show you how to code transactions. So once you've coded your invoices, you've brought the transactions in, you've matched them off, then you're going to go back and code the leftover transactions. So that's things like that don't require invoices. So maybe you've gone and bought a few personal items, maybe you've gone out to a cafe for lunch or something like that. Those are the transactions that don't have invoices. Now I can see straight away that I have some coding rules set up. And I can tell this because I've got a little purple box underneath each of these dates that you can see for the bank and for UDC. So this is where I was saying you have multiple transactions coming in and you can send them all away at once. We've got a wee button at the top that says Run Coding Rules. If I click that, it's going to send these 3 or more, there could be more, 5 transactions. It's going to send them all the way to completed. So I'm going to click Run Coding Rules. And it's just asking me, do I have any invoices that I want to match? I don't. So I'm going to click Run. And down the bottom left, we can see a box that says 5 coded transactions moved to completed. So that's it. They've all been coded and done. So yeah, set up as many of those as you can. And I'll show you how we're going to do it within the transaction. I'm going to open up this transaction from the shop. And instead of saying code, I'm going up here to the top right where I can see a wee plus symbol in a box. And this is why, again, with the invoices, this is why I like to do my coding rules, set them up within the transaction, not within my settings, because it's already picked up the information for me. So the other party contains the shop, and I want to code it to personal drawings. So say PED. And I know that it's always going to be personal drawings. So instead of having to open up each transaction every time they come in, I'm going to do it as part of a group. And that's where we're going to run those coding rules. So I'm going to click save. Let's see. Yeah. And you will see how what it does to the shop transactions. We'll give it just a minute to catch up. There we go. Suddenly we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more transactions, 6 even, that have got a coding rule set against them. So I'm going to click that button again, run coding rules, and run. And now we've got 6 transactions again that have gone away to completed. And now we have just a couple left to code. So I'm going to show you how we're going to code using the mouse, and also how you can code using your keyboard. So the mouse, we can go from field to field to field, and when we're ready to code, I can click on code, and I can either type in my code or I can select my code from the drop down. And I'm going to take my mouse and go to save and click save, or save and next and click save and next. I prefer to do my coding with my keyboard. I find it a lot faster. So let's say we'll open up that transaction again. So New Zealand Fuels. And I'm just going to use my tab key on my keyboard. So tab, 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 code goes green, spacebar, and there you go. Suddenly you've got that line to code. So now I can code, say, farm fuel, VHFF, and I'm going to use my tab key, tab, 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 over to the dollar value. Let's say that we've got $1,000 as diesel. So I can, if I want to go back, instead of using my mouse, I can hold down my shift key and tab, tab, tab to go backwards. So I'm going to call this diesel. And I'm going to change that amount to $1,000. Here we go, because I only want 1,000 of it to go to diesel. And now I'm going to tab, and you can see where it says add new line, it's slightly highlighted now. Spacebar again, and we've got a new line. So now I can call this one VHFF again, and I'm going to call it, I'm just going to call it petrol. And let's say we've got $200, add new line. Now I've got something that I want to charge for the ute. So we're going to use that coding rule again. So VHU for ute, and it's split out automatically the remaining amount. So just be aware that if you're using code split rules with a transaction and you haven't quite finished splitting those lines out for your transaction, you need to put in the dollar value that you want it to split before you put the code in. Otherwise, it's going to assume that the remainder of that transaction is going to be split. So just keep an eye on that. And there we go. So I have coded that transaction. I'm done. If you are in a transaction and you don't want to use your mouse to code, so contracting, I can go to description and hit enter, and it's done, saved, and it takes me back into needs action. So just a couple of tips and hints there on how to code and do it quickly and efficiently. Right, so that is your transactions and matching done. I'm going to show you how we can bring our bank transactions in. So up to the wee icons on the right, we have an arrow pointing up and down. We can bring in supplier invoices, so PTG, farm source, rural code, that's how you're going to bring them in. You're going to go into your supplier or your bank first, into your online banking, download the bank transaction file, then you can come in here, click that button, go to browse, and find the download, usually in your downloads folder, double click to bring it in, come down here to import, click the button, and it will import all those transactions down the left-hand side of your screen. The bill payment, if you want to pay your bills out of Farm Focus, so you send the invoice details to the bank and pay them all there. The dollar value, sorry, the little dollar sign there on the right. And the first thing you're going to do is select the invoices that you want to pay. This is what I was talking about, you need to have a contact and you need to have a bank account number. So this one here, farm contracting, it's telling us if I hover over the explanation mark there, your other party is not set up as a contact, so we need to set them up first. So I can go to View Invoice and do it from here. And I can come up to Other Party, highlight that line, and Add New. Cool. So we've got Farm Contracting Grows. And we don't need an address because it's not a tax invoice. We just need that bank account number. So I'm going to scroll all the way down the bottom, and I'm just going to chuck in a number. You can put your particulars and your code in there too if they're regular transactions or regular invoices. So maybe your customer number or your client identification. And so that's all done now. I can save it. And it takes me straight back to my export. I can select them now. Select these other guys. Just be aware that if you have got an invoice for money in, we had this trip a few people up, they're saying, why can't I select this invoice to pay? It's because it's money coming in. So you're not really going to pay yourself, are you? So you cannot select invoices where it's income, only expenditure. Right, okay, so now I can create a new batch at the top here, and it's going to ask me for a payment date. So I'm going to select there first. And now I can see the total amount of all of these invoices plus my projected bank balance at the end of it. I might decide that, okay, I'm not really comfortable with paying this one here for 12 grand until I get a bit more income, so I can remove this one from the batch. And now we've got a completely different running total and the balance has changed as well. So now we can click Export Batch File. And it's going to export it into your download folder. From there, you're going to go into your online banking, import in that file. If you make any changes at the bank end, just be aware that it does not make those same changes in Farm Focus. So if at the bank end you decided to remove another invoice for payment, you're going to pay them later, just be aware that in here, it's still in that export file. So you're going to have to come back in and remove that invoice from the batch. Otherwise, it will be permanently part of that batch, and I'll show you how that looks. See these invoices here, they've all got a batch number against them now. Yeah. Right, so that is the needs action screen. Completed, we'll quickly show you through that. Right, so we've got the payment date, invoice date. We can sort these fields by all of the headers we've got at the top here. In Farm Focus, what I really like about this particular screen is that I can search the whole page for a particular transaction, another party, did I pay them? I can't remember, I need to find out, without having to go into each of the columns and search that column. So if I was looking for a dollar value in Cash Manager, I had to go to the amount. I had to put in, click the header and put in the amount I was looking for. In here, I can search the whole sheet. And I really like that. So let's have a look for something going up to the search bar there. I want to make sure that all of my insurance is coded, my personal insurance is coded correctly. I'm just going to type in insurance, or start to type in insurance, and I can see all of my personal insurance codes, transactions that have been coded, and anything else that's looking at the word insurance too, not just the code. So my rates and insurance, I might decide I want to change that code. I can do that in here just by deleting and either typing in or selecting a new code. So this isn't ideal because it's changing the GST component, but we'll do it anyway. Personal insurance. Yes, so just a note, not a good idea to change codes in here if it's going to change the GST component, because it's not going to change it in here for you. You need to change it opening up the transaction itself, and then you can change it in there. So we'll just cancel that. So this is where everything goes to live when it's been coded and matched. If you realise you've made a mistake or you need to unmatch an invoice or a transaction, you can do so. Just get rid of that and put my payment date. So where's one that we have? So this is a great example of doing a search. I'm going to look for FarmX. There we go. Oops, I'll try that one again. There it is. This is the one that we matched earlier. So if you have an invoice and a transaction and you want to unmatch them so that they both go back to needs action, this is where you're going to do it. All we're going to do is come into that transaction. Here's the invoice in the wee dotty box, and I'm going to say unmatch. And so it's separating the two from each other. Save it. They're both now back in needs action. So that's your completed stock activity. Again, like all other screens in needs action, you can sort by the headers. So the event date, the event if you want to see all your births and then your deaths and then all your sales and purchases. You can sort by code. This is quite handy if you're using that livestock trading report and maybe you've missed a few weights. You can look at the stock code, sort by that stock code, so you're seeing all your codes together, and then go into each individual transaction and adjust the weights. So that's really handy being able to do that in here. Everything that happens in here also flows through to your livestock rec. So if I create a non-financial event up the right here, so birth, I've got a date I can put in, I can put my births, deaths, all my other non-financial events in there. So let's say you've done your tally after docking, so I'm going to put some, well, actually no, this is a dairy demo, so it won't do it. I'm just going to put in some little heifers and put in the parent code. So I'm going to choose mixed stage cow and quantities, so let's say 30 and save. And then there they are. Where did they go? Oh, there they are, 28th of the 1st, 2022. Now, balancing, this replaces the reconciliation. So there's no more of this printing off your bank statement from this date to that date and then entering those details into the reconciliation and then matching them all off. It's doing it for you. Every time you code a transaction or match one to an invoice, it is automatically bringing your balance up. It's reconciling for you. So when you first move over from Cash Manager, even if you were fully reconciled in Cash Manager, you are going to be unbalanced when you move over. And it's simply because Farm Focus looks at all those transactions that are coming through from Cash Manager as being manually entered. So we need to manually bring that balance up. And what I mean by that is, scroll down until we can see where we're balanced. Here we go. Right, we've got this lovely little green line, and this is telling me that up until the 15th of July, everything that had happened at the bank had been recorded in Farm Focus. There was nothing missing. And after that, we are unbalanced, and we can see that because we've got the red focus balance and the red bank balance. And straight away, I can see why we are unbalanced, and that is because we have an uncoded transaction. If you have the Farm Focus balance does not recognise transactions that are not coded. That will only move when you've coded those transactions. So if you're in here and you see that you've got some transactions that are not coded or matched off, you can actually do that from within here. So if I go into that transaction and I can either code it or I can match it from here. So computer, save it. And now we are fully balanced again. In fact, we are fully balanced until we're, keep going. We are actually fully balanced because we've got no transactions. There we go. So we're balanced up to the 30th of November. So when you finish your GST return and you've got all your coding done, come in here and check that you're balanced so that you're not missing anything. If that lovely little green line is sitting at the end date of your GST return period, then you can go ahead and file that GST. So that's your balancing screen. And just bear in mind, if you have a bank feed, it will automatically balance it for you. But if you are manually entering transactions or you're importing them from the bank in a file, you do need to come in here at the end of the month like we do here and enter in the balance. Okay, tax invoices. We don't have debtors in Farm Focus, but we do still have tax invoices. We're coming up with statements pretty soon, and we have an aged debtors report. So that's all free. Debtors there was a charge involved in Cash Manager, so that's all free now. We can see all of our tax invoices here. If I click on this little graph icon here, this is going to take me to my tax invoice summary or my aged debtors, so I can see what's outstanding. And at the moment, it's just Bella Farmer. She's got one invoice, the invoice date, the reference, and it's telling me that at the moment she's 1 month overdue. So we go all the way up as standard up to 90 days plus. So that's her balance. So when we have the ability to bring in statements and issue statements, it will actually be quite awesome. But until then, you won't be able to issue a statement. Right, so I'm going to go back into actuals and into tax invoices. Over here on the settings cog, you can choose if you want to be GST inclusive or exclusive. You can bring across your farm business logo, and you can also put in a generic message to your customers. So on the left-hand side of the invoice, we've got your bank account details automatically loaded, depending on the account that you've selected within the tax invoice. And we have the note on the right. So if you're changing your bank account number, if you're shutting down over Christmas, or you need to communicate something to all of your customers, then you can do that in here and write a note. So we'll save that. Now, repeating invoices, there's nothing in here at the minute, but if I had an invoice that I wanted to keep repeating, like say every 2 weeks or every month, then I could set it to repeat for as long as I want, and it'll pop in here. And so I can see all my upcoming repeating invoices. When the date that I've specified for that invoice to be issued comes around, it flicks it into needs action. So that's what I mean by repeating. You don't need to keep writing out the same invoice, it'll repeat it for you.